Well, welcome back to the Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You podcast. My name is Shawn Langwell, and I'm your host. And I started this show in November of 2023 with one goal in mind. I wanted to bring people together from all walks of life and industry to share their experiences, their strength, and some of the insights that they've had in the careers that they have chosen. If you like honest, vulnerable, and real stories about what it takes to not only become great, but self-confident and bold enough to be yourself, then this show is for you. Each of my guests started out as ordinary people like you and me, but have accomplished extraordinary things in their lives to be considered great masters or experts at what they have been called to do. Join me each episode for inspiring, encouraging, and meaningful conversations with diverse people from all walks of life and industry. And I have a dear friend and lifelong friend with me today by the name of Stacy Thal, and I'm going to read her bio here. Because she's done a lot. She's kind of a big deal in the enterprise world. And, just a backstory, both Stacy and I were co-valedictorians of our eighth grade class, a nice tiny class of 40 people. And here we are. I'm doing a podcast and she's building brands. What's it called again? Brand better brands.
Brand's better.
Brand tongue twister.
Yes.
Yes.
Brand's better. Yes.
Brands better. Say that fast 10 times after you have a Slurpee. So Stacy Thal is the founder of Brands Better, a senior brand and creative strategist with 20 plus years of experience. Stacy helps investors, founders, and marketing leaders sharpen positioning, clarify messaging, and build brands that drive growth. Her background spans agency, consulting, and in-house leadership at Google, Walmart, and Yahoo, along with fractional work for dozens of startups and growth stage companies. Now known for combining AI-enabled insights with human nuance, she helps teams move faster with greater clarity, confidence, and focus, all while bringing warmth and levity to building better brands and better workplaces. Stacy, welcome.
Thank you so much. You know what? That stuff is true.
It
That you just
is.
read that you just read off. I feel like, wow, looking back on my career, like, yeah, I did some stuff. That's fantastic. But I will say in your introduction, you said fantastic things about who your guests are and what the, center of your podcast is and stuff. And I was like, I aspire to be what Shawn says. I want to be all those things. I want to do all those
Hmm.
things. And then you read my bio, and it's like, yeah, I've done some of those things. I
And
have.
that's
Yeah.
part of the reason I do the show because all of us, the word great freaks some people out. It's like, oh, I'm not great. I'm still not good enough. I'm not perfect. And yourself included, you've done some very notable work for the last 20 years with names that people know around the world. And when we're in the throes and thick of it, we don't always see that for ourselves. So I'm super appreciative that you're here. The conversation, folks, that I really want to have with Stacy and why I invited her onto the show is I've always admired Stacy's work ethic. I have not crossed paths with her in the advertising world. She's been at the enterprise level. I've been at the small media level for 35 years, working predominantly with newspapers and niche magazines. So, from a branding perspective, I really want to hear from you some of the current insights and also frame this whole new thing that's relatively new, AI, and how you're managing to incorporate the efficiencies and the effectiveness of AI, not to replace creative content per se, although in marketing sometimes there's some enhancements there. But how are you with your brand new company positioning yourself, and this is a chance for you to not just get on a soapbox, but really have real conversations. And we'll get into another couple questions later. So tell us what you're all about right now.
Oh my God. Start there. Start there with AI and all that.
What?
Yeah.
No, that's the frame. Start wherever you're comfortable starting. Start at
Well,
the beginning.
yeah, I think, and just listening to you and having you read that bio and just absorbing the truth of it and then having like hot tub time machine go by, I'm like, wow, I did do all those things. Um, and recently, but I feel very much like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz that I went for a time and worked in Silicon Valley with household names, and it was fantastic. But that was never my aim. My intention was to be a filmmaker, was to be a director, but I tried to get into that world when nobody was talking about diverse voices. Nobody wanted to hear anything about women or women's content. And if you were a woman and you were just wanting to make stories for people, it was still like through that filter of like, well, what is like, she's not going to have anything commercial to say. So it was a tough time. We didn't have all the content outlets that we had. We had movies and like HBO, and that was it when I was
Hmm.
doing my thing. So at some point, I had some success, gratefully, whatever. I wrote a screenplay with somebody and it got made into a movie. And so you can find me on IMDb for that one hit there. But it was a tough road to hoe. But what I experienced through that and also having a day job trying to make that happen is that people can't write. You know, that there's a lot of people in the world that have fantastic ideas, but can't connect the dots between what they're doing and what they want to do or bring into the world, um, and marry that with what's going to move people to action, you know, on their behalf. And I discovered that, and the writing part of it for film really helped me on the marketing side of things, put myself literally, what not literally, but into other people's shoes, right? So writing
Hmm.
characters and dialogue and things like that. So I got into, maybe I had some facility with that going in, but I got into, when I was doing screenwriting, taking on different personas and things like that, which I was able to translate easily into putting myself in the shoes of customers, right? End users. So at some point, I had enough success in whatever I was doing that I bought a house as a single woman in San Francisco, no small feat. And I wanted to keep that friggin' roof over my head.
Hmm.
So I went in house for some years and pivoted all this great, whatever, writing stuff that I came into the world with, and this experience that I had with the film stuff and pivoted into marketing. And just, you know, that with some youthful bravado, I started on Craigslist, you know, I
Did
started
you
on
really? Oh my
Craigslist. Yeah.
gosh.
Craigslist is like, do people pay people to write? Is that a thing in the world? And I discovered something where I sat around in this great like loft, like warehouse space in San Francisco and learned that, you know, the whatever skills that I had about writing were at a premium, that people didn't know how to do that. People didn't know how to connect the dots between what their ambitions and visions were and what was really going to move people to action. And then I had some facility with that.
It's really interesting. And go ahead and drop the name. I had it in front of me, but you know it off the top of your head. The one that actually your screenplay, because you've written several that actually was turned into a film.
Oh, I don't want anybody to watch it though.
All right, then we'll not forget it. I'm not going to
It's
delete
called
it.
Love on the Run, but you can find me on IMDb. But I'm
There
not
you go.
suggesting that anyone watch it. We can do another podcast about that. It was quite an
Yeah,
adventure
but
of
it's
many
just,
years in development with that. So we could talk about that another time for sure.
but capping on how the genesis of wanting to put a keep the roof over your head, so to speak, and storytelling as well as dialogue with film. There's, let's dig into that a little bit more, just for the average person who's listening to this. I've got a lot of listeners who are authors and creative folks,
Mm.
and they are storytellers. But when it comes to the marketing side, there's this brain fart that happens where we have to start doing self-promotion, and we can't, like you said, connect the dots with what our skill sets are and the themes and the tropes of that. And it can be applied to anything, Stacy. In your world, it's totally different, but it still comes down to the same thing of really finding that core sweet spot of the ideal customer profile or ideal client profile or genre, who's going to read the book, who's going to watch the show, who's going to buy the product. So delve into that a little bit more from uh, putting yourself in their shoes perspective, to give some of my listening audience and others listening to this some tips on how you go about that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that so I was doing this, I went from copywriting, I created my own business doing marketing, advertising, public relations, didn't know what I was doing, but had good instincts and could write. And then, like I said, I went in-house, but at some point I created a business, like a side hustle that everybody has now. I created a side hustle called Well Put, with a friend of mine who was also doing writing for a living. And our vision was to help Silicon Valley bros in particular figure out how to communicate and sell, like whatever it was, pitch decks to investors and things like that, but to help them relationally to figure out how
Okay.
to communicate, especially orally. But all anybody ever wanted us to do was help them with their resume.
No kidding.
Because, yeah, because like we were aiming really high and we got the word out there, but everybody has, to your point, such self-consciousness about self-promotion that even if you know your whole own history, translating that into something that goes public, there is this like humility that we have as individuals, which is lovely, but sometimes leaves us behind the eight ball, right? If we don't have the whatever moxie to be able to do it. It's very hard, very like cobbler's kids have no shoes kind of thing with the resume. And so, yeah, I think it's pervasive that people have a hard time promoting themselves. And I would say that especially artists, that I grew up in an artist household. My dad was a photographer in the Hollywood film industry, also a Playboy photographer. So imagine the therapy bills from that. Um, but so I understand the artist temperament. In fact, when
Hmm.
I was on my own, starting out on my own as a consultant, I had a lot of artist clients to help them bridge the gap between those was like visual artists, lots of painters and other like sculptors and things like that in San Francisco to help them bridge the gap between, their secret ambitions, right? To have
Hmm.
people see their work like art should be so noble and it's just for like it's somehow spiritually driven and so you should be humble about it and not sell it, but meanwhile like how are you paying your rent, man?
Right.
And the world needs art, right? And so many artists have so much to give to help people feel a sense of community, right? Maybe lots of artists that I know speak or write or paint in specificity, but it brings up the universal experience that gives us all a sense of solace, especially these days. So, for me, I think maybe that's a cheat code, right? Is
It
that if you
is.
are suffering, if you are an author or some other kind of artist, a writer of some kind, and you're having a hard time figuring out how to sell yourself, you don't have that mercenary sense like I do, where I'm just like, I'm a super self-promoter, try to be humble about it, but super self-promoter, not uncomfortable with that. But if you are, maybe that's the cheat code is to try to project yourselves like you would create a character, try to create a character for yourself, which is your end user, and be thinking through that model. It's not a bad thing. I do it with my clients all the time on the enterprise level, small business for, solopreneurs, lots of investors and founders, is to run them through exercises to understand their ideal customer profile personas and
Hmm.
give them kind of like in the old days, it used to be something like, who would you want if you could, have anybody be the face of your brand. Now it's an influencer or something like that. So to be thinking in that way that create that character, and give them a name and give them a picture. And you can even create that with AI these days where you could put all sorts of prompts of what you imagine if that helps you bridge the gap. But to get into maybe this is where AI comes in now is to do some research about their demographics and psychographics to better understand who they are. And if they are a publisher or an agent or something like that, you can do the same with them if you're looking to get somebody else to help you get your stuff out into the world.
Well, and it's also imperative too, and I know this just from personal experience and also working, being part of the California Writers Club and Redwood Writers for over 10 years now, that this is common, at least in the writing world. And oftentimes the books that are published, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, in some way, shape, or form, the storytelling, whether it's memoir or nonfiction or not, the storytelling is influenced by our own experiences. And that you can riff off this because you live in this space far more than I do. But identifying this comes back to the self-awareness part and paying attention to what we like. Often from a creative standpoint, we tend to gravitate and bring people around us that are similar to us. There's this comfort that happens of belonging. And that word belonging for me, Stacy, is really about the core essence of marketing from a vision standpoint, but it isn't always when you're talking about an enterprise level company where you have different avatars or customer profiles of people from literally like the show, all walks of life. So just maybe on a snippet level, just put you on the spot here, but pick a random product that can be fictional or not, and how you might go about that. Say, I'm having a brain fart, but maybe just give people some snippets of what that might look like, of what questions to ask if they're going to use AI as a prompt to kind of shape that, because a lot of people don't even know where to start.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting about it in my journey, my professional journey, is that I have worked for mission-driven companies, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit, where those things, whatever they were selling, doing, how they were serving the community, public, whatever it is, that I cared about. And I have done a lot of work where it's people that I don't care about that
Hmm.
are on the other end as well that I don't relate to. So I don't know that I always bring in my own experience in that. I think that that's part of the dance is that taking on that mantle, it might be for something that I don't care about. I remember I had a client when I was on the agency side, and oh, I know there was a good one that I had a client as a consultant that was a huge, so random, a huge, like the nation's largest construction equipment rental company. I
Okay.
mean, who cares? Like, and so, oh, it's fascinating. Like, I learned there's always a nugget in there. I learned something about that world. Like I would have never gone into that world. That world, like, oh, interesting. But what was interesting to me was talking to the people. So I got to talk to the salespeople about that, and making those human connections. So that's always something that you can do as a little, social listening or interviewing, right?
Right.
Where to make it more human, so less AI, more human, that maybe there's like a listening tour that one could go on. That's my experience is that it's more about when you're trying to drill down to the customer thing, it's less about trying to hone how you describe these people so that so that you can figure out how to articulate that so it resonates. That is the end product. What leads up to that is an enormous amount of listening, right? And not just listening to yourself, right? Going out and listening, or if you're using AI, you can do that kind of market research with that. So I think a prompt would be, because you're only as good as your prompts these days, it would be, I don't know, whatever the fictional thing is. I am an author of a nonfiction, historical, whatever book. Um, if you're end audience, if you're trying, it depends, right, Shawn? So it depends on, are you,
Well, here I'll just use just a general thing, but I'm interested in a women's suffrage historical fiction memoir slash, but actually not memoir, biography. Who would be the ideal reader for a book like that? Something along those lines, but and you have fun and play with it. We don't have to drill deep down into that and go into the weeds. But you brought up something that I don't want to miss for the listening audience is listen, ask questions and listen and show up without the ideas of what we want out of the conversation. And you've done that for 20 years. I've done it for decades myself as a food server and in advertising sales, because a big part of this self-promotion um, rubric, if you will, is the questioning part, is the self-discovery, but also the questioning of who the market is. So let's talk a little bit more about how you get to that. Like, what types of questions do you ask? And it can be any client, fictitious or otherwise.
yeah, well, I want to read this book about the suffragettes. I'm interested. Um, Yeah, I think I would just push back and say, who is the audience? Are you trying to figure out the audience so that you can write to them, so that you can try to up the odds of being able to sell it? Or
Hmm.
do you have your idea and you know this space and it's something that you're passionate about that can sustain you through the incredible years-long writing process, and what you're looking for is who's going to buy it, or
Right.
who is the audience that you can how can you prove that there's an audience for this end product book to an agent or publisher, right?
Hmm.
So, who is the audience, right? Who is it? It's probably proof of who the audience is because whatever, the world is vast.
Right.
There's all sorts of, people out there that would be interested in this particular subject. But I think what you need to figure out probably is how you can convince a publisher or an agent that there's an audience out there. So I think that that's probably how you drill down, is to be asking the questions, and you can with AI now, of who would be, I mean, it's as simple as that. Who would be interested? Give them the description of your book, and where are my primary markets? Where are my secondary markets? What's my tertiary market? How do I bridge the gap between what, are commercial sales of, big splashy novels, and who would be interested in this sort of niche subject? How can I prove audience engagement with this, right?
And that's on the traditional agent slash publisher side. A lot of the folks that listen to this podcast are actually self-promotion or
Mm,
self-publishing, but there's
hmm.
still the same questions, whether you're traditionally published or not. You still have to have the same business mindset that this is a business. If you're self-publishing, you are a business owner, and it's incumbent upon those folks to identify who their key target audience is. And I jokingly say it, but there's a lot of truth to it, Stacy, is you write the hook before the book. You know the title, you've got an idea of who the audience is. You don't have to go deep dive into the marketing piece, but you better have for me anyway, you better have, especially nonfiction, you better have a damn good idea of who you're writing this for as you're writing it. Unless it's just a passion project, then you don't really give a rip about who reads it. You're just getting it out there because you want to do it. So, um,
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, that's what happens, right? Is that if your aim is a commercial venture, if you want to get your ideas out into the world, there's the reality of the market.
right.
But I think that, what my journey tells me, what my adventure yields, is the fact, especially now because there's so much noise out there, that the true differentiator is authenticity. So if
Yes.
you are bringing a specific kind of heart, point of view, knowledge, whatever it is, do that. What is the story that you can tell that others aren't? Or, because almost all stories have been told, what is your spin on it, right? And then, there's nothing that you can do. These days, it's very interesting that with the ubiquity of social media, now you cannot not be on there if you're looking to build an audience. And if you are looking to try to convince bookstores to help you do a reading and you're self-published,
Hmm.
then I would go through that exercise of going to, because you can now, to AI, figuring out who your audience is for a specific geographical whatever, and for that bookstore, if people are going to come in locally, and to prove that there's an audience there, right? To be able to say that it's not just the readers of female fiction or nonfiction or whatever it is, but it's also people that are interested in social justice or whatever it is. And to say, I think that AI, you've got to push it some and pressure test it and not take its first whatever draft as gospel. But you could drill down into even like how many people might buy the book, right?
Right.
What the odds are.
So let's use that as a segue because you mentioned the word authenticity, and it's one of the things I've always, ever since we were kids, I appreciate about you, and
Oh,
I'm the same way. It's part of my upbringing. It's like, I write, I wrote I write no BS personal growth books grounded in freaking 40 years of lived truth. That's what I do. And if you
yes.
don't like it, then you're not my reader. That's kind of the nutshell. But let's go back to authenticity. Here's the oxymoron and the paradox. Authenticity in AI, artificial and authenticity. How, from your perspective, because this is part of your new business model, and I know you well enough that you've probably given this a ton of thought. How are you articulating that for those out there who may be clients? Because we're going to segue into some shameless self-promotion for you in these last 10 minutes, as well as those who are still skittish and scared to death of what AI represents and how it's, you know, devil spawn, if you will, to use a made-up term.
Hey, and to those people, I say I completely agree. I mean, there's something since I grew up, as you did, Shawn, in the era of dial phones.
Oh yeah.
This is like a magic trick every day. This is amazing, especially since I've been, in between all the enterprise work that I did, because I was in that volatile world. I got laid off 6 times in 12 years, and every time would default back to my consulting work. Um, it's amazing to be able to have a helpmate for, whatever, 20 bucks a month or something. I have
Yeah.
this thought partner with me that I can spar with all day long without worrying about HR. So it's fantastic. In that way, I believe it's going to be the death of all of us much sooner than later. That seems to be proving out to be true. So I could go off about that forever, but in the meantime, it's quite helpful and very magical. And right, so what's the rub between authenticity and artificiality? Is that I mean, this is the fastest pendulum that I've seen so far in my professional life. Always seeing it swing back and forth, like in the world of marketing, where it's everybody is in-house and then they let go of everybody because they think they can do it cheaper and they want to get rid of overhead. So they do agency, and then agency becomes too expensive and someone has the bright idea and some contacts and they want to bring it in-house again. Um, so in
Sorry.
this world, and this is what I'm kind of laying in wait for and have prepared myself for, is that we finally have the ability that capitalism has always wanted, which is we can do things cheaper, faster, better now. But what they're seeing is there's now this homogeny and there's this glut of just okay information where everybody's starting to look the same now. And so folks like me that have had the lived experience that can see BS, your words, not mine, BS from a mile away because of how many times we've created it ourselves and learned from it. Or, I have had whatever many teams that I've led over time. I have that discernment. I have that editorial eye. I can
Mhm.
see it from a mile away when it's not on brand, right? So that discernment, that taste, that judgment now is at a premium again.
Yeah.
So what I see as AI for me in the business world, a lot of it, let's say in marketing and branding, is it's like having an army of interns. And some of them are quite bright, and some of them are not so much. And many of them, I would put them on a performance improvement plan. They show up on time, they're always there, and that's fantastic. And they don't cost you anything on the coffee budget.
I'm
But
sorry, I could interject. I put the AI on, army of interns on a performance improvement plan. But yes, having
yeah.
spent hours and hours and hours practicing with it, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's an all-day sparring match. It's a debate
Hmm.
where AI is coming back. I'm wanting it to give me all the promise of efficiency and effectiveness, but it comes back to me and I can literally read through the lines of how it's not great and it's working to please me or it's
Hmm.
being kind of lazy, right? And I have more lived experience discernment that I've, accumulated over time, expertise to sense those things. So I can ferret that stuff out. So when I talk about authenticity, what I do with my clients these days is that everybody, it's interesting experience to go from having one-on-one conversations with clients and everybody under this crush because there's this expectation that everybody's using AI now. So you should be able to do things faster, better, cheaper. But my work that I do is conversation driven to try to tease out of the minds of people what their ambitions and their vision is so that I can really marry it up with what's really going to move their customers to action so that I can connect those dots because they're oftentimes not the same. Um, so what I'm looking for is where what the real story is. You use the word storytelling a bunch of times. What the really real story, the nugget is of why we created this business. And even, like a lot of brand strategists start with defining your mission and your vision and your values in order to get to those nuggets of who you are, not only so that you go out into the world consistently, but so that you attract and retain the right kind of team members and things like that.
Hmm.
But what I find is that not everybody can bridge that gap, that you have to have those conversations and tease that stuff out.
Yeah, and as a tool, for the work, I mean, I think everybody really should just spend some time playing with it to understand what Stacy's talking about. Because at first I was reticent. I like to pretend I'm an early adopter and I'm not. I stopped buying new consumer electronics when they first come out because it's just quite frankly planned obsolescence. And anyway, I won't say that. Anyway, the point is,
There's so many other
there,
podcasts that we can
you
do. We need to like write down all
I'm
the
just sitting
subjects
here,
that
my
we could
mind's
talk
going
about.
off on rapid tangents here, and you and I could do 10 of these shows. So, coming back to using AI as a tool for your business, what does that look like in just a couple minutes, and then we'll segue into how people can find out about you, your new your new brand, yourself, who you're looking to reach. There's your chance to get on your soapbox
Oh,
in
thanks,
a couple
pal.
minutes.
I appreciate it. Well, I think, for me these days is that it does make me faster, right? So the pressure to go to market has never been greater because the expectation is that you can do it faster and faster. And there was already so much pressure. I work with a lot of startups these days.
Hmm.
Um, so AI does make me faster in that I can vet my thoughts about this
Right.
mission, vision, values, and things like that. Where I started to go with that is that where I start as a brand strategist is what is your foundational belief to get to that authenticity, which is why did you stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning dreaming about this, or why were you in coffee shops for hours and hours with your co-founder talking about this? What's the passion? What's the nugget there? What really drives you? And it's not usually something mercenary. It's something about humans that you can do better for the world. You can have a better widget, whatever it is. That's the thought. But for me, these days is I have plussed up what I'm able to offer, right? So previously it was just based on me. And then
Hmm.
sometimes I would be able to bring in like a market research person or an SEO expert, a search engine optimization expert, or a growth marketing person. Now I can create all those bots, all those team members for me to plus up what I do so that when I come to the end of my brand strategy or we start with personas that we can hone it in a way that I couldn't before with any kind of real confidence, right? It was a lot of hard won experience and best guessing. And
Sure.
now we can prove it out. We can pressure test it some. We can have some proof in there.
And that in and of itself, because I pushed it to the limits. I know exactly what you're talking about of a sparring match where you just push back and you can read right through, regardless of what platform you're using, you can read through the bullshit pretty quickly. But what you're talking about is you're the creative visionary of your company. You're a strategist by nature from the work that you've already done. And by using, and I'm putting some thoughts into your head right now, but by using AI, you're able to create these visions of what you would have as an ideal um not intern, but somebody to help you as a chief strategist, as a chief strategist offer, and pull this together so much more quickly because you've already lived for 2 decades in that world. You know some of the questions as lived experience to be able to feed those prompts. And this is where I see the blending and the merging of human touch and artificial intelligence coming together because the marriage, as you started to allude to, can be incredibly powerful if you have a big idea of what it is that you're trying to accomplish with it. So, in essence, if I hear you correctly, you can basically run a full-fledged agency with 1 to 2 people right now.
Yeah, that was just the LinkedIn. I just saw a news alert came on LinkedIn about a story. I'm going to quote it wrong, but the point was that everybody can be an entrepreneur now, right? That you can create this workforce for yourself,
Mhm.
right? So where you would have to hire a bunch of people to look into all sorts of like product marketing, viability and things like that, you can do that research now. Can you trust it?
Not
That's a whole
always.
other story. That's a whole other story. But I want to give your watchers, listeners, one nugget, which I use all the time. So I'm grateful. I am really great at prompts because I have been prompting humans for so long as a
Mhm.
leader in whatever realms that I've been in. So it's just like I talk to it as if it's somebody that is working for me, but without all of the like, hey, how are you doing today? What's happening? Like you don't have to do any of that cajoling, which is nice. Um, but my nugget that I want to give you is that whatever prompt I do, if I'm starting out on a project, at the end I always say, don't write anything yet. Don't write anything yet. Do you understand the assignment?
Mm.
And then AI gives back to me whatever I've communicated, its interpretation of whatever I do. And that gives you another bite at the apple to be able to say, I left something out, or AI is not interpreting what I said correctly, or maybe I, whatever, misspoke, miswrote what it was. And so you get that reflected back before you waste a whole bunch of time in this wrestling match. Is that do you understand the assignment that I'm giving you? Like, whatever, like an intern, right? Do you understand the assignment? Or like marriage counseling, hypothetically, where, you pair it back to me, like, did you hear what
That
I was saying? Say it back to me.
that nugget, Stacy, because it took me a good 2.5 months of trial and error and becoming incredibly frustrated because I wasn't asking the right questions.
Mm.
And that frame, folks, if you're still dipping your toe in there, that nugget is great. The other thing that I used recently is I don't want you to write anything. I'm asking for frames. I want outlines. I want structure. Do not write anything. You can give me all the gurgitation you want, but I'm just looking for a structure for this crazy mind of mine that can talk 100,000 miles an hour, that can't write or type that fast. Take that and make some cohesive sense out of it so that I can go back and recogitate on it and figure out where I want to go from there. And then we might talk about some crafting and shaping of the prose that I want to do. But no, don't write anything. So one more time for those that didn't hear it, don't write anything yet. Do you understand the assignment?
Yep. That's the magic one.
That's it.
Yeah, the only other thing that you could do is say think deeper. And that just unlocks another level, especially if
Okay.
you're using ChatGPT. Think deeper. If you're not getting what you need, you can ask it to think deeper and it reaches into more complex thinking.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
great information.
Yeah. Thanks, Shawn.
Let's put here you are. You've got the Golden Gate Bridge in the background on my screen. This will be out there as a podcast as well as YouTube video for who's are following me. And this is Stacy Thal, who we've been visiting with. Brand brands better,
That's
not all that
it.
other tongue twister
You
stuff that I
got
heard
it.
because
You
it's
got it.
BBB. And if you want the abbreviated version, it's B3 for a reason, not to be vitamins. Be the brand that you want to be. Stacy, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, brand's better. You can hit me up through the website. I'm unfortunately on LinkedIn too much. But if anybody has any questions, first conversations are always free, and I'd love to hear from anybody that's got any whatever challenges I can help with AI and beyond.
Oh, that's great. Do you want to give your email? Oh, it's all on the website. What's the website again? It's on the
Brandbrandsbetter.com, and you can get me at connect at brandbrandsbetter.com.
there you go. Folks, this has been Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You. I'm your host, Shawn Langwell. We've been visiting for the last half hour or so with Stacy Thal. And just a delight to have you on the show. And we will get you back. And I also want to get your husband on here because I was
Oh,
looking on some of the stuff that he's done and
yes.
on air. Let's get Craig on the show because he's in a different lane that I live and breathe in that would be just a delight to help some of the people who are
Thank
out
you.
there
I'll pass
doing
that
great
along for
work.
sure.
Um,
Thanks, Shawn. It's
so
been great to hang out with you, as
it's been a
always.
delight, Stacy. Thank you so much.
All right.
Until next time, folks, if you like the show, like it, share it, follow it, talk about it. It's growing by leaps and bounds. And that's what I do. I just like to do stuff that's fun for other people and to share a little bit of insight. So thanks again, Stacy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Shawn.
Bye.